you to our Parent and Family Association meetings. So the way that our meetings work is we give you all some reminders. There is a subject and a speaker each month. And then at the end, we have a Q&A for all the questions that you might have because we know there are many. And then we're going to get you all into breakout groups so you can make some connections with others. So as we begin this month, a couple of reminders for the month of September. So one thing that we know a lot of folks talked about over the summer is how students can get involved. In a virtual setting, we want to ensure that your students are still able to make connections, to join organizations, to learn amazing skills that will help in their growth and development. And one great way that they can do that is through the Virtual Involvement Fair. So the Virtual Involvement Fair is happening from today through Wednesday, September 16th. Students can log on at any time to visit our over 700 student organizations and learn more about how they can join them. So they can do so in the Campus Labs groups, and there is a link on the agenda of how they can join the Virtual Resource Fair to learn more about those student organizations. So encourage your students to log on today through Wednesday, September 16th. So we know that there are a lot of questions about the university status. So a lot of questions about spring, and I'll be honest, spring, we don't know yet. We've just barely started fall. We're into week 3 of our fall semester. But if you have questions about services, if you have questions about departments and how they're operating, there is a link in the chat to the university status page. That page is updated frequently. So you might have questions about libraries. How can your students utilize the libraries or other places to study? There's a FAQ section on that website, and in the FAQ section, your students will be able to see all of the services, their operating hours, and how they can utilize those services on campus and how they can utilize those virtual services. When information about spring does become available, that will also be posted to the page. But until then, you'll be able to see everything that is occurring for the fall of 2020 for the operating hours, virtual and in person. So please ensure that you bookmark that page, continue to visit it often for all the information that you need about the university's operating status. So some other reminders for you all. Today is the last day for the drop add period. So for your students that might be looking to change their courses, they can drop or add anytime before midnight tonight. So make sure that they are doing that through their RevReg. So there was a quick question, are Rutgers ID required to access on-campus services? They absolutely are. Students are needing to swipe into buildings to access within the hours that they're open. So if your student has not received their ID, if you are a new student that hasn't received their ID, they're currently being mailed out. But if your student needs it for immediate access, we can get you the link to where your students will be able to get an ID. Give us a couple of moments and we'll drop that in the chat for you. And we'll have a Q&A a little later in the meeting, so we ask that you save the majority of your questions and we'll get to them then. So other reminders for you all is Level Up. Level Up is a success opportunity for our sophomore students that they can join, and there is a link on the agenda that describes a little bit more about the Level Up program, but it's basically designed for our sophomore students who will be facing different changes in their second year, changing majors, declaring their majors, taking on higher level positions within student organizations. So your students can join that wonderful resource, and the deadline is September 16th, and the link is in the agenda. So those are some of the quick reminders that we have for you all. We're going to get to the panel because we know that's why a lot of you are here. And after the panel, we'll have a Q&A to get to any other remaining questions that we may not have answered that are not related to the academic virtual environment. So we ask that you save your questions until that time. So at this time, our panelists, y'all can go ahead and unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves. And we're going to get to the questions in just a few, but we're going to go ahead and start with you, Dr. Phelps.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. My name is Craig Phelps. I am an associate teaching professor in the Department of Environmental Science. And as an associate teaching professor, I'm the course coordinator for Introduction to Environmental Science 101, which is a very popular course that fulfills core requirements. So we have a lot of students taking it. And I've been teaching it online for about 10 years now. We teach it in person and we teach it online. This semester we're teaching it all online, so it's been a real a real adventure for us. The other thing that I've been doing this year is that environmental science is part of the School of Environmental and Biological Sciences. And the deans there put together a committee of faculty who had experience with online teaching in order to advise other faculty. So we've been working as peer mentors to try to help other faculty get up to speed on some of this teaching technology.
Next, we're going to go with Camilla Stevens.
Hi, everybody. I'm Professor Camilla Stevens. I teach in two departments in Latino and Caribbean Studies and also the Department of Spanish and Portuguese. And this is my first semester teaching online. I was fortunate to be on sabbatical last spring and dodged that. I spent the summer, I think a lot of faculty, I'm in the School of Arts and Sciences. I should mention my son is also a student in the School of Arts and Sciences, so I'm seeing this whole process from both sides. I think I understand it better from the professor side than the student perspective, but I'm learning and I'm glad to be here and I hope I can answer some of your questions. I've met with 35 of my 45 students personally, individually, and I do have some insight in what their struggles are, and I do have some advice.
Thank you. All right, so next joining us, we have Kate.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Bachman. I am an instructional support specialist for Rutgers Teaching and Learning with Technology. So basically, my job has been to help as many professors as possible take their content from in-person to online and kind of teach them how to use the online tools that are available to them at Rutgers. So I'm going to be showing you all just a little bit of what the students need to know and how they can get help on Canvas, which is the website that most of the courses are going to be on.
And Natalia.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting us. My name is Natalia Kuraeva, and I'm instructional designer, and I work with Kate, my good colleague and friend. And these few months have been a real challenge because a lot of professors starting teaching online for the first time, and many of them also transferred from Sakai to Canvas. So we have a lot of, a lot of help that we provide. And so I'm looking forward to share with you any insights. I will not be presenting, but I will be monitoring chat, and I'll be happy to answer any questions I can. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so one of the first questions we have this evening is for professors. What are your suggestions for students to be successful in the virtual environment?
I think this might be stating the obvious, but the single most important thing to begin right now is having a set schedule every week and setting your schedule as though you were following an in-person semester and looking at the combinations of times. We normally would have a very typical schedule would be a Monday, Thursday, or a Tuesday, Thursday, or a Tuesday, Friday. And so they should look at their whole week and have a chart and be able to devote at least 2 80-minute sessions to when the class would have been meeting. And then also think about what additional time do I need to listening to the videos that you may be given or whatever activities you might be doing online. On top of that, you're gonna have to be doing your readings and your different kinds of assignments. So it's all about managing time. And I think the students that have the majority asynchronous classes need to really think about scheduling and sticking to a schedule. And if they can do that, they're not getting more work than they ever would in a regular semester. They should be able to manage their time. But that's the first step, is putting together that schedule.
Yeah, and I would completely agree with Camilla that scheduling is really important. What I am hearing from students is that a lot of them are feeling really overwhelmed because they're looking at the expectations for the class, and it's a lot. It's a lot coming at them very fast. And partly I think that's our fault. We really preach to the faculty, make sure you communicate what your expectations are right up front. We ask them to organize it and say, what are all of the things going to be? And because of that, I think they're giving the students like everything all at once. If they were in person, I think the professors would say, well, I'll see them again Tuesday. I'll let them know about the exam then. I'll explain more about this homework later. Instead, what the students are getting is just all of the expectations. And I think they feel like maybe it seems like more than the usual amount of expectations. But the fact is that it's just a lot more explanation of what they are. And as they go into the semester, they're going to start to realize what things have to take time and what things don't have to take time.
I would say that I spend the majority of my time right now writing instructions and trying to make them crystal clear. So I agree that they're being bombarded with instructions, and something, you know, these students these days are really good with working with screens and being online, but I've suggested to a few students in conversations that, why don't you take my weekly announcement, copy and paste and print it out as a checklist for you so that you have something concrete by your side. That helps some kinds of students. And another thing, when a lot of times the question is, what's the work? And they're learning to distinguish between, well, the main work for a class is often just to read, and it's to listen to the video lectures that we're giving them, right? But that doesn't mean that what they mean by work is, when's the paper due, when's my assignment due, when do I have a test coming up? And so you really need to keep explaining that, no, the main amount of work that you're going to be doing is just this steady, continual keeping up with the content, right? And then occasionally that there are going to be assignments that are checking to see that you're doing okay with the content. And that seems amorphous to them a little bit in the online world, I think. The fact that when I even give a checklist saying, first thing you should do is view the video, second thing you should do is read this reading, and the third thing, write the reading response. They just need to remember that viewing a video is work. And I think one of the struggles with online teaching is that we've been told to give much shorter videos, right? To give little chunks of information is far more effective. When in reality, a lot of us, not me personally, but a lot of us give 80-minute lectures. So it's hard to change that teaching style. But I do think a lot of us have transformed our course and are giving shorter lectures. But one piece of advice I would give is, and I'm telling this to my son all the time, that watching videos is not kicking back with your Mac in your bed. You should have a pencil in your hand. You should have some notes out. You don't have to take dictation, but you need to be engaged with what's being said. At least write the name of the lecture, the date of the lecture, the main topic, even if you're not taking continual notes. Because I think sometimes the students, when they're looking at the screen, become a little bit passive. Less passive than when their bodies are present in front of a professor listening. So anything you can do to encourage your student to be active as they're listening, I think is helpful.
So the next one I'd like to pose is to Kate. So Kate, there have been some reports of folks that have capacity issues or issues with Zoom crashing. What suggestions can you give to students who are having issues with Zoom?
Zoom is supported from the Office of Information Technology, so I'm not an expert on it. I can give you their contact information for Zoom, for Zoom support. I don't know if Natalia knows more than I do, but yeah, that's not something that our office supports.
If you could put that, the contact info for their support, that would be great.
I will jump in just for a second. I think Zoom is a very new tool and everybody is learning it, students and instructors. So we have to allow a little bit of flexibility for that learning, beginning period. However, from the student's point of view, I always recommend to do two things. Number one, to immediately contact tech support for Zoom, and Kate will pull that information and put in the chat room. And also, if there's possibility, take a screenshot and communicate with the professor. So they know that you didn't skip lecture just because you didn't feel like it, but that you experienced some technical difficulties. And most of the time, professor will record the lecture and you will be able to take a look at the lecture at maybe a slightly different time. But again, communicate two ways, technical support and instructor. Thank you.
Absolutely. So when students are having issues, the suggestion is to email them, let them know I tried to join the room, I was having an issue, and see if they can get a recording if they're not able to join.
Exactly.
Communication, absolutely. So from your viewpoint of learning instructors, from the online side, what tips would you all give, Natalia and Kate, for folks who are new to this kind of online learning virtual setting?
Yes, I agree very much that schedule would be very helpful. And another thing is just being responsible for your learning. It's a little bit of a challenge. We often have students coming to the college environment and they're not used to the fact that there's no, telephone call home from the teacher, that there's nobody kind of holding your hand. It's so much more is on the students. So just kind of develop that skill of really becoming responsible for your own learning, and keep that in mind as you go through, and make sure you're responsible for completing assignments. If you're not understanding something or missing something, or something happened at home that you're not able to meet the deadline, communication is number one. Talk to your professor. Often instructor will hold office hours. So if that is not indicated in syllabus or at the front page of your course, feel free to ask, is there any time I can meet with you online, using online tools. Don't be afraid of technology. Technology is actually much easier to learn than the content, and also just being a good student, meaning being responsible, keep open line of communication, and try your absolutely best to really learn what you're supposed to learn in each course.
Thank you.
Kate?
Well, I was actually looking at the chat, and I can address some of the questions if that's okay. So there is support for the professors. So if you need basic Zoom help, you can meet with somebody from our office, or you can call the number that I put in the chat. And then, are there any capacity issues with Canvas conferencing? Yeah, so if you're a professor in here, if you're somebody using Canvas who's using Big Blue Button, there is a 100-person limit and an 8 breakout room limit, which is why a lot of people are gravitating towards Zoom, because you can have, I think it's up to like 500 people or something. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, you need to get familiar, because it's going to be heavily used, because it's the most flexible.
Thank you. All right, so heading back to, I'm gonna head back to Craig and Camilla for a second. So there was a question that was submitted earlier about office hours. How are professors holding office hours? And if students are having issues understanding the information, what are the best ways for them to connect with their professors?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, professors are very independent people, and so each one of them is going to try to solve the problem their own way. Not everybody holds specific office hours. Most of us find that if you set aside an hour every day, no one will show up and you're just sort of stuck there. On the other hand, meeting in person has actually become easier with Zoom, because you don't have to say, well, when are you on this campus? When are you, free from class? But I've been able to connect with students much more easily. The thing that we've been telling everyone is try to be as flexible as possible when it comes to contacting your students. Try to let them know. I was also watching the chat, and I saw there's a lot of concern about just how many emails people are getting. Students are getting so many emails about assignments. And I do expect that will slow down as the semester gets underway for real. But we encourage all faculty to answer their emails and we encourage all faculty to be available to meet. But there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to the um, the office hours question.
I'd like to add that my class is asynchronous, so we don't meet live, but I scheduled office hours from 2 to 3 twice a week on Monday and Wednesday. And when I scheduled that on Canvas through Zoom, that sent email invites to everybody in the class, which then caused mass panic because they all said, oh my God, we can't meet. I've got another class from 2 to 3. And then I had to explain, no, these are office hours. These are just drop in if you want to talk, hang out, discuss the class, ask questions, prepare for an exam. I'm just here on Zoom waiting for you to come by. In a regular semester, like Craig mentioned, Rutgers is a big place, so not every student makes the trip to come see you. And I usually have very few visitors, maybe somebody for a letter of recommendation or something special, but not many people stop by. And already I can say in the last 2 weeks, I've spent hours on Zoom talking to students and just trying to get to know them in a whole new way that I never did before. I mean, maybe I did the chit chat before and after class, and this is kind of substituting for that. So office hours are really important in the online environment, and we are seeing students take advantage of them, and I think it's great. It's so easy just to say hello, and then I'm doing mine all at the same time. So maybe 10 kids will stop by, and then they get to see each other, which is good for them to know that they're part of this community. And then I can put them in a waiting room if I need to have a personal conversation with somebody. But yeah, office hours should be widely available. Professors should be doing at least 1 hour a week, and then accommodating. If a student couldn't come from 2 to 3 today, I stayed till 3:30. Just to make sure I could touch base. So I hope that the students really do take advantage, because I think the faculty really is enjoying office hours right now because we're missing the conversation with students, at least those of us who are teaching the asynchronous classes. I kind of look forward to my office hours now.
Yeah, and I'd like to agree with what Camilla said about the confusion from these Zoom invitations. That has been the biggest point of confusion for my students and for me as well, because I work with other instructors doing the same class. At one point, I got 50 invitations to a Zoom meeting, to Zoom meetings, and I finally figured out one of my instructors was simply trying to schedule ahead everything for the semester. I'm like, that's fine. But then I got a notification every single time they deleted one because they do a recurring meeting and they delete the one that comes on Thanksgiving, or then they change something. So I think the students have really, really been getting bombarded with that. I do expect it to slow down. So we're trying as hard as we can to communicate as clearly as we can. And I think that is leading to a little bit of overload. And any faculty that I talk to, I'm going to try to encourage them to be really clear about what the expectations are when it comes to meeting.
Thank you. Kate and Natalia, can y'all speak a little bit to the various learning platforms? Are there any changes that will be coming to merging them? There was a question about why is there more than one platform for learning, Canvas and others. Is there any guidance you could provide in terms of that?
Yeah, so this is a question that we get all the time. Rutgers at one point had 5 learning platforms. We're narrowing it down, and we're in the transition of moving only to Canvas. We're using Sakai, and that was the major learning management system. So it's taking a very long time to get the professor's content from Sakai to Canvas, because we can't just delete everything and start from scratch. So we're in a transition period. We will eventually be just on Canvas, but for right now, unfortunately, we're on both.
Yes, and another thing I would like to mention, again, talking about transition and trying to be flexible, please understand that Rutgers is a very large university, and there's a huge a number of courses that has to be migrated and redesigned and really looked at. So this process already started, I think, more than a year ago, and it's continued. And at some point, we're just transferring courses department by department. So it is not always possible that all courses that your students may be taking will be on the same platform. And, you know, I know it is not convenient, but if you look at it from the positive side and thinking that technology will not go away, if anything, it's going to stay with us and become even greater part of our lives, it's not such a bad thing that your child will learn to use different platform and also be more flexible and fluent in how technology change, because change in technology will be continuous, and it's okay. Just look at it that way if it's possible, and just calm them down. And Kate will be sharing some resources for you know, self learning courses for Canvas, and the same type of tutorials available for other systems. So take advantage of that. Just allocate a little bit of time, learn main tasks that you need to do to succeed in course, and it's going to be okay. And I also want to mention one more think about the other comment that people ask, and the question is, can we ask all professors type of thing to set same deadlines for same project, so it's more convenient for students to keep track of their project. Again, there's a wonderful tool, it's called Calendar, and I'm sure Kate will demonstrate how to use it. So when you look at your calendar, you would be able to see your deadlines for all of your classes, and that is very convenient. Also, when you look at syllabus in your course site, you also can scroll down and see all deadline. So you don't have to rely only on checking emails. And again, to ask everybody to do it in the same way, it's not possible. That's again the huge difference between school and college. And I have my son completed college, so I'm very familiar and can very much relate and feel for this kind of challenges. We've gone through them as well. But again, all professors are independent and they're free to teach how they teach and how they prefer to teach. There's no one central command that can issue you know, a requirement or order for them to use one system or another, or to set their deadlines one way or another, or to use Canvas only, or use Zoom to meet with them or do lectures. There's no such a command center. So professors do their best and students have to learn to adjust.
I also think, I'm looking at the chat, a lot of these questions could be geared to the instructor. I know I'm also taking graduate courses part-time, and a lot of my instructors will actively check in with us and say, what do we need to adjust, you know, due date wise or assignment wise for you to, you know, be able to be in this course successfully. So I think just communicating with your instructors, you know, I don't have enough time, like I'm working, I can't get this assignment in by 6 p.m. Communicate that to them, and I'm sure that they would work with you. And then something else, why do they do weird times for tests and quizzes? My guess for that comment, that they have it this evening between 8:30 and 11, I'm wondering if it's because they want everyone to take the quiz at the same time, and that's when everyone's available to prevent cheating. That's what I think, but I don't know.
And also some of those times are just the default. So like I mentioned before, many instructors are still learning the system. So they might not even, you know, like they didn't pay enough attention, maybe what exact time would be more convenient. So by default, it goes at 11:59. And again, you don't have to submit last minute. If it's interferes with the work schedule, it is better to look at your priorities before, look at all the possible deadlines, create that schedule, create that calendar, and really plan ahead. And it is probably one of the most challenging part of becoming student, especially for the first year. Become a successful student. There's even special courses for student success. It's not about the content. Students can be absolutely brilliant with their content, but managing priorities, managing their time, have clear understanding of all deadlines and emails that they can send to professors. That is a challenge, and that's expected challenge, but communication is the key. If any question arises, talk to your instructor.
I think in some cases, the instructor polls the class and says, when are you available to take the test, and then picks this time. That might seem unusual, but everybody seems to be free. Um, I'm not sure. I'm trying to limit testing while I'm doing the online format because I don't want to deal with these issues of having an asynchronous class and then all of a sudden telling everybody you have to be somewhere at a certain time when they haven't been set up to do that all semester long. So I'm trying to do a variety of different kinds of assessments. But one thing that is quite typical is to have assignments due late at night, and I'm continually amazed at the schedules my students have. They literally stay up till 2 or 3 every night. I don't think that's a great plan, but I think it's super typical. And so for me to give them to midnight, I probably in the old days wanted something by 4 p.m. because it might be easier for me to grade and to look at it. And they've over the years said, no, could we have till midnight? And they want it later to have a little bit more time. And so I've just gone along with that. But there would be no way that all professors could obviously set a schedule of due dates that are in harmony with each other, because everybody's reflecting their own learning goals and their own pace. And so my assignments are keyed to my readings and are happening on certain days. It has nothing to do with another course, right? So yeah, but like they mentioned, the calendar on Canvas is incredibly useful to see everything in one, screen.
As far as the odd times, some of the times that I'm seeing, I think are being set by schedules that the professors had previously. 8:30 to 11 is it's a standard, midterm testing period, testing time. So some of the bigger classes with a lot of sections would have common exams, and they would be in the evenings. And so I think, the professor's used to it being then, and so they say, we'll just do it then. Or the other thing is that even though our courses may be listed as asynchronous, um, when we scheduled these classes, they had a time. So I have an asynchronous class, which means nobody has to attend lecture in person. However, I'm still giving lecture at my usual time, Monday, Wednesday. Out of 300 students, I had 24 show up tonight. That's fine because I got to talk to them and I got to record it, and now everyone can watch it. So I could have that period anytime where asynchronous. I could do that, but I'm just sticking with what I have, right? It's what we've always done. So when you see professors saying, the quiz is from 9:40 till 11, that may be the class time that they were originally planning to teach. And we definitely do try to set up our test in small. A lot of people try to set them up in small periods of time so that everyone's taking it at once. Um, but the general recommendation is give them a full day. And as far as these midnight deadlines, I'm guilty of the midnight deadlines too, and I know that they would rather probably have them at 3 in the morning, because that's midnight to them. But the fact is, you have to pick some time. There's always going to be a cutoff time, and it's not always going to be, perfect with someone's schedule, so long as you give them enough time ahead of time. So everything's available. It just has to be done before midnight. If you want to do it at 2 in the morning, do it at 2 in the morning before the midnight deadline.
So there was a question about capacity. The question was, how many people does e-learning support? And is someone matching the number of students with the technology limits?
I'm not sure I understand. E-learning supports everyone at Rutgers. I'm not sure I understand the question. Natalia, do you know?
Well, I'm assuming the question is about video conferences like Zoom or Big Blue Button, maybe only when the synchronous portion of the course is going on. Maybe the question is related to that. But in general, there's nobody can controls how many people can be taking courses. Again, I'm not clear about the question either. Maybe
Yeah.
somebody can clarify, what did you mean?
I think from the professor's point of view, what we do is we know how many students we have signed up, and then we pick the technology to fit it.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really liked Big Blue Button in the spring, but it only holds 100 students, so I can't do it for my class. Turns out if only 24 show up, I could do Big Blue Button, but we're doing Zoom now. So it's not so much that we're changing the classes to fit the technology. Right now, we're just picking the technology to fit the classes.
I see Pat just explained that she was talking exactly about the web conferencing. She mentioned that her daughter is in 400 class, and yes, Zoom would be the most appropriate for that such a large class, and that's probably what they had to move.
So if a test or a quiz is given at nighttime, will it always be in that same window for that class? If not, how can students set their schedule? And what suggestions do you have for them being successful for times that might move around?
I think the student should ask the instructor. I think they should, I mean, I'm giving one midterm exam and they've got 24 hours to do it in so that they can make an arrangement and they know now what date the date is. But if they're going to be getting continual quizzes, they should know a schedule ahead of time so that they can make arrangements. So I would definitely just reach out and ask, will it always be at this window? I need to know for scheduling purposes.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of these questions really come down to the fact that every faculty member is trying to make the decisions on their own for what will work best. And most of us, I hope, have good intentions, but not everybody is on board with the idea of trying to help the students get through this the same way that, the present representatives might be. So mostly, if something is hard to deal with, it's because the professor hasn't figured out how to deal with it yet. And if you let them know, they'll try harder. Right? Quiz times jumping around. The only reason someone would do that is if they found out that it didn't work the first time, so they're trying something new. But if you let them know it needs to be consistent, I think they'll try for that. And I guess one more thing, sorry, Ashley, is that a lot of this comes down to you have to understand your students, your children are in their own schedule. Nobody else has the same schedule as them. And so everybody has their own time constraints and their own constraints about how their classes are going to fit together. So they have to reach out to the professors to make that work.
Thank you. So there was a question about how do you find an RU approved tutor? And I'm going to ask Julacey, who was just getting out of class. She wasn't here for intros at the beginning. But Julacey, if you want to unmute yourself real quick and give an introduction. I'm going to put you on the spot real quick.
Not a problem. Hi, everyone. I just got out of class. I'm a graduate assistant here for New Student Orientation Family Programs. So the question was regarding tutoring. So under the Rutgers Learning Centers, there's a huge array of tutors available who are seeking opportunities online. So I recommend that you search and browse the site. I could also add and attach the link to the chat room just shortly. And I've also, when I was an undergrad, I'm a recent graduate of Rutgers too. So there were many times where I was struggling with a class and I sought the tutoring available on campus. This is when we were back on campus, and not for nothing, if it wasn't for that class, for that tutor that I had that I met at least once a week, I was able to pass effectively, and I passed with flying colors. So the resources available for Rutgers and the learning centers and these tutors are really trained to help and assist students in any way that they can. And just shortly, I'll be adding the link in the chat room so you can find out more information.
Thank you. All right, folks. So other questions that you might have for our professors, for our instructional learners, for our learning instructors. I don't know why I said that backwards. Other questions that y'all might have. And I know that Kate has a presentation for us in a bit. So there's a question on how to get student mentors. In terms of the academic setting, are there different academic mentors that students might have in their majors? So Angela, oh, there you go. Shalacey is on it. Visiting the Rutgers Learning Center, you should be able to search by courses offered in majors, and you should be able to find information for tutoring there. And as Shalacey said, there's no additional cost for them. So in terms of student mentors, there are various programs that have mentoring for students. There's no set university mentoring program, I guess is kind of the quick answer. Is the quick answer for that. Sometimes there might be mentors by major, there might be mentors by different programs, whether it is different identities that students identify with. So there's a variety of ways where students can find mentoring. So I guess I can say, Vijay, there's no short answer for that, but we can get you in contact with some different mentor options. And I'd say one of the best things your student can do is to go to the involvement fair. And again, that's where a lot of our departments, our student organizations, and our services will be advertising. And there is the link in the agenda of where they can find the involvement fair. They go through, they can search mentoring, and they'll be able to get a long list of the organizations that offer something similar for them to benefit with. And then I'd encourage them to check out that success.rutgers.edu link as well. So there's a question, what resources are available on campus for students who live in the area? So Brian and Valerie, if you want to clarify resources for students that are looking for something to do, resources for students academically, if you can clarify in the chat, that would help us better answer. The next question, and I'll start with Craig and Camilla for this, are live lectures taped to view later, especially if students may miss the lecture if they have technology issues?
Well, I can tell you that my lectures are always taped and available to view later. But it's up to the individual instructor if they're going to do that. I believe everyone's been encouraged to do that, where Zoom allows for easy recording. It even does closed captioning if you let it. And so we're encouraging everyone to do that, but it's up to the individual professor.
Yeah, there are some professors that aren't comfortable with recording the lectures. I think most people are. My class is asynchronous, so I'm having to pre-record everything. So the students can listen to me over and over again if they wish. So they have that, that ability. I will be honest, I'm teaching a very small course in the spring, I think if we have to go online and we have to I'm doing a literature class at small size, I would choose to do it synchronous, and it would be discussion based, and it would only be like 15 people. In that kind of context, I don't know that I would record the lecture. I certainly would if I were a professor teaching 400 students, because I think there's just so many areas where you could have technological difficulties. But I think in a small literature seminar course, I may not record, and that's not to it's because our conversation is something that's just kind of germane and live to the moment, and not the kind of thing that you necessarily would record. So just to explain that there are different philosophies on recording lectures. I'm talking more of a discussion rather than a lecture.
And to add to that, there are also legal issues. If you're having a discussion in class, then you're recording your students, and they need to give consent to have that that put online for other students. We're always locked into our learning system, and so only registered students have access. But it's very easy to break out of that and have that video shared.
And also, just to add to that, instructors are not required to record the lectures or provide the link to the recorded material. So it is, again, up to each individual instructor how they decide to, to teach their course.
So Maria had a question about students that may not do well with online learning. How can Rutgers help, or should they contact the professor directly? I think it's a combination of all of that. I think one of the biggest things, one of the resounding messages we seem to be hearing this evening is to reach out to your professors, right? Whether it's issues with not knowing when a quiz is going to be scheduled, whether it's technology issues that students are having, whether it's not understanding the material. The best way that students are going to be successful is reaching out to their professors, seeing whether it's office hours or whether it's holding an individual meeting with them one-on-one when they can on Zoom. Reach out and to pose these questions. Professors are really open toward feedback. One thing that I can share, and I know that everyone on this panel can likely agree with teaching a course this semester, there are many times where we hold office hours that no one comes to at all. And you can offer all the support in the world and students will take advantage. But one of the biggest things that I can attest to with teaching a course is whenever students reach out, I try my best to work with them. Someone reached out to me earlier today about having a full-time job that conflicted with our class time and having a lot of assignments, and they weren't sure how they can really ensure that they were going to be successful. And it's really working with each student because you want them to be successful, right? Nobody wants to see students fail. Nobody wants to see students struggle. And so it's looking to say, how can I work with you to ensure that you can reach a place of success? What does that mean? Now, I'd say 90% of the time you can work with students to try to find a good solution. And every now and then, sometimes there's no amazing solution. Sometimes it is important for them to maybe drop the course, to find a different instructor, to find a different class time. That sometimes may be the solution. But professors are really open to wanting to work with students and to want them to be successful. Students just have to reach out and they have to ensure that they're taking advantage.
I would like to add a little bit to that. So why not, some students do not do well with online learning. That is very broad definition. I recommend to kind of analyze and pick out the parts, what exactly the problem, what with online learning seems to be the problem. Is that just feeling disconnected? Is that fast paced? Is that not able to understand material? There's so many different aspects in online learning. And also, I just want to kind of remind that if sometimes students have learning disabilities or any kind of other disabilities that may affect their learning. So please make sure to reach out to Office of Disabilities. They have recommendations, they can work with you. And if disability is already, it's recorded disability that already established and diagnosed, you can request a letter of accommodation that can be sent to specific instructors in your course. So it's very important to really understand what difficulties with online learning your student experience and see what different help could be available for that. Thank you.
And piggybacking off of that, Natalia, I'll show you in my presentation later how to report an accessibility issue in Canvas. It's just 2 clicks. It's super easy. So if that is something that needs to be done, I'll show you how to do that.
Thank you.
So there was a link that I put in the chat earlier in addition to the status page on the agenda. So success.rutgers.edu has a lot of resources for students that may be struggling, whether it's links to the learning centers, different links for the help desk for technology. So definitely encourage your students to visit that website because Rutgers has a lot of resources to help. So the answer is both. Reach out to your professors, but also Rutgers has some great things for students who are willing to take advantage of it. So as we wrap up with the panel, you can go ahead and put any last minute questions in the chat. And then we are going to have Kate get her presentation ready in a few seconds. For our panelists, is there anything that we didn't ask you that now that you're speaking to our parents and family members, any last minute advice that they can give to their students?
I think that it's been said several times, and that is reach out to your professors. Make sure that you realize that everybody is struggling through this process. You know, our classes were designed to be taught a completely different way. So we're very open to hearing like, oh, this isn't going to work for us. So definitely reach out is probably the most important thing.
I would also say that your students are not alone in navigating Canvas. We have our help desk for Canvas is 24/7, 365. So Thanksgiving dinner, they can call our help desk and somebody's there for technical Canvas support. So yeah, don't feel like they're left alone to fend for themselves.
I can attest to that because I email help desk at Canvas every day and I always get a response at any time. They're amazing with the support that they give. I'm also very impressed. I think all of my students are doing wonderfully on Canvas and figuring it out and have given me tips already. So the students are doing really well with technology. One little tiny detail I think is important. Make sure your student has headphones. Because when you're with a student and they're wearing headphones and the dog and mom and dad or whoever, if they don't have a private space or are moving around, they're distracted and they're feeling and they're kind of looking back. The students who are wearing headphones, they're not noticing those sounds and they're still looking at you and focused. So they're really a worthwhile investment, I think. I'm not wearing mine right now and I should be. But immediately, I don't teach synchronously, but people are noticing certain etiquette behaviors about people wandering in and out, the students, and they may be making some requests in the future, you know, to keep your video on or not to leave or whatever they may have. I'm not one of those professors teaching that kind of class, but the thing about headphones I think is useful.
Okay, much less technical advice. Success is not a destination, it's kind of continuous journey. So it's okay for your students to understand that some things gonna go very well and some may not. And the main thing is not to give up and continue and reach out to a professor. And if it doesn't work, you maybe drop the class and take again. And it's none of that is end of the world, just keep on going.
I'll put the Canvas support info in the chat right now. I see your question, Angela.
There was one last question about Proctor Track. Students sometimes experience some anxiety about Proctor Track and knowing that the screen is always watching their eyes and where they may go. Is there any guidance that y'all can provide to alleviate some anxiety about Proctor Track and other similar programs when they're taking tests?
Just try to follow directions. I'm not a big fan of these tools, but a lot of professors feel strongly that tests has to be taken in that kind of environment. And, you know, I don't have a magic solution, just try to follow instructions carefully. And again, if something happened and students feel strong that, you know, they didn't do anything wrong, but maybe, I don't know, like one student was sharing a story that there's a rabbit ran into the room and the Proctor Track took it as an issue. So again, communication and clear explanation will help.
You can also remind your students that even if Proctor Track flags something as cheating, the professor still has to look at that and say, well, was that cheating? And if we see a rabbit run in, you know, we're not going to say, aha, the rabbit's bringing them information. We're going to say, oh, it flagged it because a rabbit came in. It's all automated. So don't worry too much about the automatic part of Proctor Track. It still gets reviewed.
And I realized, Michelle, I'm not sure if I interpreted that incorrectly, if you meant like the fact that students are constantly on the computer screen, if that's also what you meant by constant screen watching. But I know that one thing that's really helpful, we had a number of students over the summer that would present and answer questions. And one thing they talked about was going to Amazon and getting some $10 blue light glasses and using those blue light glasses as they looked at the screen to help alleviate some of the strain on their eyes, as well as kind of setting an alarm and ensuring that whether it's every, and I know I'm going to get it wrong, but for now I'll just say whether it's setting alarm for every hour and spending, spending about 10 minutes or so looking at somewhere outside of the screen and focusing their eyes off of the screen is helpful. So those blue light glasses on Amazon, they're $10. They can definitely save the eye screen, and scheduling breaks away from looking at the screen and focusing on something other than the screen can help alleviate some of that eye stress.
There's also something, at least on Macs, I've never done it on mine, but one of my coworkers has done it. I think it's called like night mode or something, and it softens the light from the screen. I don't know how to do it, but I'm pretty sure that would help.
As the father of a teenager, I can say it's great to tell them to take breaks every once in a while, but everything that they do is on the screen. So if they take a break from their classwork, they're still looking at a screen. They're looking at their phone, or they're doing something else on their computer. So I totally agree. We should try to find as many ways to filter it out as we can.
Yes, night mode on laptops are very key as well. Can help you turn down those bright lights that they see. So we have Kate who's going to give us some tips. So Kate, are you able to share your screen?
Yes, 1 second. And Natalia is going to monitor the chat while I do this. So if you have questions, just keep throwing them in. So this is Canvas. It's just going to be 5 minutes really quick, mostly for help for your students. So canvas.rutgers.edu is the website. And before they even log in, there's this tab for students, and they have a bunch of resources. So getting started in Canvas, there's a student orientation tutorial that they can do at their own pace, and this just teaches them how to use the system. It gets them familiar with it, and they can practice without actually going into their course. There's some frequently asked questions, and then there's student documentation for most of the stuff that they're going to come across in Canvas. There's documentation on how to navigate it. So that's before they even log in. So once they log in with their net ID, they should have all done this by now. I'm only really going to cover the left-hand side. So I saw something about students getting bombarded with emails, and it's too much. So from Canvas, they can tweak what emails they get. So they would need to click on account and click on notifications. So they can opt in to receive something daily, immediately, daily, weekly, or not at all. So I recommend they go through this and filter what they want. Tell them not to turn off conversations because these are emails from their instructor. So they should be getting them immediately, and they are by default. So this is a way to kind of filter what Canvas sends you. So your inbox isn't getting overloaded. Another thing they can do that kind of, makes it a little less, makes it a little more familiar to be online. They can upload a picture of themselves in their profile. They can put a little bio. So it kind of feels like, more in person. They're more engaged with their peers. It's just, little things that help with that. Their courses, all of their courses are going to be under this courses list. So this is how they would access everything. Their dashboard, these are courses that they have favorited. So it's just like ease of access. They can get to them quicker. They have their to-do list. So in addition to the calendar, anything with a due date is also going to be on their to-do list. So there's multiple places telling them where their assignments are due. So I think that's really helpful. And then any system-wide Rutgers announcements will show up here as well. So we talked a lot about the calendar. Mine takes a while to load. Okay, here we go. So their calendar will have every class that they are enrolled in. So if I want to see my calendar for gender and education, I just click on the little dot and it'll throw anything that my professor has put a due date on into my calendar. So any assignment, discussion, quiz, anything that's due will show up for me. So I can use this as a resource to help stay organized and manage my time. Inbox, this is where they can email their instructors and their instructors can email them. So this is the main way that they're going to communicate with their instructors. So straightforward, there's a compose a new message box with a pencil. They pick their course, they write their email. So they will also by default get a copy of this email to their Rutgers email. So a lot of communication is happening. I think that that's much better than no communication, especially right now. Better to have too much than not enough. And then finally, the help button. This is the most important piece for your students, I think. So I mentioned, we talked earlier, let me move Zoom out of the way, about accessibility issues. That is under report a barrier. So if your student has an accessibility issue and they need to report it, this brings them right to the Rutgers site for doing that. Let's see. They can chat with Canvas support. So if they don't want to contact someone via phone or email, they can direct chat. Canvas support is, I believe they're also 24/7. They're super helpful. Our help desk works closely with them. Our Rutgers Canvas help desk, like I said, is 24/7, phone or email. Here's their information again if you didn't take it down the first time. And then there's more documentation here for students. It's almost an overwhelming amount of stuff, but they'll always, have their questions answered. And then they can also email their instructor from here. So contact your instructor, opens up the Canvas email. They can contact the libraries. And then the rest is pretty much or they can report a problem if there's a technical issue. And then there's a COVID Canvas resources page. So I recommend that your students and you go through this, feel comfortable with the system, definitely do the student orientation tutorial if you are brand new to Canvas and you're, a little intimidated, because there is a learning curve. And most instructors have been, patient and accommodating, but it's definitely, a learning curve, but you have the support here to help. And that's pretty much it. So any questions? I haven't looked at the chat. I don't know if.
No, we don't have questions.
Awesome. All right.
I would like to add one more thing. Kate, do you mind to open any course and just show the loudspeaker that students can use to read, to hear the material, not only read, because the more way they get their information, the better it's, it's easier for them to understand. We have this.
The screen reader, what you mean?
Yes. Can you please show that a little bit?
Okay, yeah, so it's
useful.
this little play button on the bottom left. So if you click on that, it'll pop up. It'll play automatically.
History of American Education. History of American.
So it reads the text on the screen. So maybe you do have a student whose eyes are straining and they need, to take a break from their computer, they can just play it. Or, if you have, impaired vision, this is also helpful. So yeah, good point, Natalia.
Kate, also you promised to show how to report accessibility issue. Could you please show that?
Yeah, I think I did, but yeah, I could do it again. Under help, report a barrier. And then if you click on that, it'll bring you to the IT Accessibility Initiative page, and they can fill this out. They give the exact course, they say what they were trying to access, and this gets reported. And I think by law, the instructors they have an accessibility clause in their syllabus, so they have to, accommodate for that. So if they need to report something that's not accessible, they do that directly from help, report a barrier.
Thank you.
I'm just looking through the chat.
So where the little speaker was a textbook in Canvas. It's any content in Canvas, not necessarily textbook, but let's say professor put information just like this introduction, or any kind of material that they copy and paste or type it up. Little speaker can read it for you. Another thing that if somehow little speaker is not doing what you want it to do, or you have difficulties, advise your students just copy the content, copy the written test and put it in Word, and you can use you can hear the text that way. So there's different way that you can actually take content and translate it into either audio or the other way around. From audio you can use speech to text, and try to get the transcript that way. We encourage all instructors to provide transcript for videos, and also make make their content presentable in a few different modes. But again, you can do some of that yourself. Just copy paste into different program, and you can have access to that different way.
Okay, well, that's all I have, so I'll stop sharing my screen. But of course, I'll still check the chat, so if anybody has lingering questions, feel free.
Thank you, Kate. And at this moment, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for taking the time to share these helpful tips with us and to answer the questions from our audience. We're very grateful that y'all took this time with us here this evening. So I know that you may be available for a bit more for any last minute questions that come through, and if there's any information that you want to put in the chat for our guests. So now that we have it finished with our panel portion, what we want to do is take a couple moments to kind of see if there's any other general questions that y'all have that we didn't get a chance to outside the academic setting. We know that there are a lot of questions. One question I'll go ahead and preempt, because we know this is always a popular one, is we're not sure what's going to happen with spring. We're only 3 weeks into the fall, and we're just getting updates on offices now that are opening for the fall. And Julesi, if you can place that Rutgers University status page in the chat for me. This page is where you can find information about various offices. So your students might want to study in the library, they might want to study in the student centers. As offices start to open up, there are various hours of where you can see how students can access it, whether it's on person or virtually. So go ahead and check that status update website, and that will be updated as time goes along. So when an announcement is made, we will give you some more information about that. It likely won't be, we likely may not hear until November, but know that we're still working on fall, and that's where you can find information. So there was a question about how students can get ID, and I know I posted that in the chat way earlier. Give me a second, Abigail. I'm going to scroll up and find it and give it to you. So as we mentioned earlier, in order for students to access buildings when they're on campus, they will need their ID. For new students that attended orientation this summer, IDs were mailed out to them. If your student hasn't received it or doesn't have their ID, there is a website where they can visit to be able to get information to access their ID so that they can swipe in on campus. Give me 1 second, and I'm going to post that website in the chat. So that's where students can go if they need to get an ID so that they can be able to swipe in on buildings if they are on campus. Other questions? I'm not in love with my picture either, and I'm sure on that website, I'm sure there's information of how ID pictures are submitted. I'll be honest, I'm not sure about how they can redo a picture, but I'm sure that there'll be information on that website about the pictures that are used. So there was a question about campus safety. So did Rutgers take action to secure the university? So different things, the fun thing about security, and it's not really fun, the thing about security and when things happen is there are things that happen on the Rutgers campus and there are things that happen in the New Brunswick and the Piscataway area. And so what happens is the university will report when things happen in the university area so that students are aware. So there was an incident that happened in the university area, but not on the university, and that's what was reported. So the New Brunswick Police Department that responded did take action to secure that area and sent out alerts to students. So they were able to sign up to get RU alerts. So a lot of times you will find things that are reported aren't necessarily happening on Rutgers, but are happening near Rutgers, and that's why students do hear about it. And so whether it is the New Brunswick Police Department, the Rutgers Unit Police Department that are responding, they do take action to secure area and send out alerts to students so that they can take action. So students are encouraged to sign up through their My Rutgers dashboard to receive alerts so that they know things that are happening around campus and to keep themselves safe. If a student is not on campus this semester, do they need an ID? All students are encouraged to have a Rutgers ID. It is very important to have. A lot of times when they're taking online courses, they might be asked to just provide a ID and an ID, but it would be very helpful for them to have, and a lot of times they get different discounts. So I would encourage them to go ahead and to get their ID because anytime they're on campus, they will be asked for it. So although they're not on campus now, it's better to go ahead and get one so that when they are back on campus, it's one less thing that they have to worry about. Do they need to make appointments to get IDs done? I don't believe that they need to make an appointment. They can visit that website and get information about how their IDs can be mailed to them. So I believe right now students are able to get a first ID printed at no additional cost. And then after that, it's the $20. So they are a little more lenient about the ID since a lot of students didn't receive a first ID. So if students didn't receive a first one, they will get one printed for them for free. Yeah, I know, Melissa, it is a tough time of folks not maybe looking their best or having their haircuts. So I definitely encourage you to look in that website to see if there's information of how they can resubmit a picture. And if not, maybe we can give that off as feedback of how we can get different pictures now that quarantine is lifted. All right, so Julesi has posted in the chat, if you haven't already, please fill out the attendance form. That lets us know that you were here so that we can send you follow-up information. So we are updating the agenda literally as we speak with the links that were listed today. So we'll be able to send out shortly after the meeting. We'll get the recording downloaded. So sometime tomorrow we'll be able to send out a recording of this so you can rewatch it if there's tips you want to give your students or parts that you happen to miss the first time around. And if you fill out that attendance form, we can ensure that you receive updates continuing to move on from here. So make sure if you haven't already that you've checked in. So yes, housing deposits were refunded. In terms about the money on RU Express, I'm not 100% sure if that is refunded or if you have to request a refund because I know that students can still use RU Express or that it will still be available for them. I believe the website is food.rutgers.edu. Yeah, so if you head to food.rutgers.edu is where you should be able to find some contact information about RU Express in terms of getting that refunded. That is one I don't know off the top of my head, but I know if you are to contact them at food.rutgers.edu, that you can find an email address to email their staff to inquire about the RU Express. So for those inquiring about refunds, refunds are generally going to the student. So Jennifer, if you didn't receive your housing deposit, I would inquire with your student because the refunds are generally funded to them. So they may have an idea of where your money is. Students are able to apply for refunds to receive them directly by direct deposit or via a check. And if you need further information, you can give our office an email and we can assist you further with that. All right, I believe that was the majority of the questions, but we'll still be hanging around. So we have a couple of last minute reminders for you all. And so I'm gonna have Julecie help me tag team these reminders. And these reminders are coming from our Office of Parent and Family Programs to help keep you connected in the future for information you need to know.
I always forget to mute myself, so I'm still getting used to Zoom. So some of the reminders include that we have virtual parent and family weekend happening October 23rd to the 25th. Tickets will be available starting on Thursday, September 17th at 9 a.m. If you haven't already done so, excuse me, please subscribe to the parent and family newsletter, which is attached on the Google Drive link that I could send again, and to receive important updates and info about Rutgers. If you haven't already done so, please follow us on the Facebook page, and then you could feel free to contact us directly at ruparents@echo.rutgers.edu.
All right, so thank you for bringing us through our reminders, Julecie. Ensure that you are connecting with us, with the newsletter, with our Facebook page, and by emailing us. That's going to be the quickest way to ensure that you get in contact with us. If you do have questions, we'll be available anytime after today. And if the question is not for us, we're happy to pass it along to someone that can assist. So whether it's for one of our presenters today or it's for another office, we'll be happy to get you where you need to be. So with that said, for those that are still hanging around, we are willing to put y'all in breakout groups if you want to spend some time to connect with others. So usually when our meetings are in person, we're able to kind of do our mix and mingle and do our icebreakers before meetings begin. But now that we're in this virtual setting, things look a little different. And we can't wait till we are back with you in person to have our meetings, to have our good food spread, and to be able to mix and mingle with each other. But until then, we want to give you an opportunity if you'd like to connect. If you are done for the evening, because it is, a little bit late at night, you are more than welcome to go ahead and log out now. But for those that are remaining, we will be here in this main room for any questions that you do have. And then we'll have a breakout room for those that are looking to connect with other parent and family members. So for those of you that kind of want to go in a breakout room and chat with others, whether it's connecting for those who are out of state, whether it's connecting for those that are first year parent and family members, whether you want to find others that are with your student's major, we can go ahead and put you in a breakout room. Just put breakout in the chat and we'll go ahead and assign you. If you have any other remaining questions, we'll be hanging out here in the main room for your questions. But for everyone else, have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much for coming. Don't forget, we'll be having a meeting in October and our guests will be announced soon. But take care and best of luck to you and your students this semester. Have a wonderful evening. So Julecie, can you help me out? Because I'm not able to see the chat. For folks that are requesting breakout rooms, can you read their names for me?
The ones that wanted to be in the breakout rooms?
Yeah.
Okay, give me 1 second. Breakout for first years, please, said Tina. Tina G. Patricia Rosa also wanted breakout for first years.
Okay.
So far, those are the only breakout rooms that I've seen requested. And there's just a couple questions at the end.
All right, so Abigail, if you are able to access on the agenda, the status, the university status update, there's a FAQ section and you can scroll down and you'll see a number of departments there that are open. So there are a lot of offices that are open, our student centers are opening up, our libraries are opening up. You'll be able to see information there about what students can access. And then Vijay, there's no specific ID for student of engineering. All students can get their IDs with that link that we listed above, and that's also on the agenda. So that's for any student. And if you all wanted to join a breakout room, please feel free to list it in the chat and we'll put you in there so you can connect with others. And for everyone else, if you're done, enjoy the rest of your evening and thanks so much for coming.